introduce myself. Hey everyone, my name's James Waugh, and I'm one of the contributors to MetaCartel, as well as doing a bunch of interesting stuff at Axia Labs, sort of game theory, that type of thing. But today we're talking about MetaCartel and building new digital communities. For those that aren't familiar, MetaCartel is basically just a DAO that gives out grants and does things for people, and for different projects and different hackers. So we've done a bunch of community events over the past year. And really it was a spin up from Waugh Alex DAO, which is a DAO that funds ETH 2.0. We just heard from Amanda talking about Marketing DAO, which is funding all of the funding marketing on Ethereum. And MetaCartel is the DAO in between those two steps, I guess, right? It's funding the applications on top of Ethereum. So here's some lovely photos of us hanging out and doing fun stuff. So WTF is MetaCartel. Really, it all started with the idea of meta transactions, right? How do we make transactions easier for people? If I've got to go in and like open MetaMask and have gas and send the things and do the other things, it's a lot of admin, right? It's pretty hard for a lot of people. And so sort of how do we bring that barrier from like 100 out of 10 difficult down to like a 5 out of 10 difficult? And that's really where the idea of meta transactions and MetaCartel started. And so now we're a DAO with 900 ETH in it, roughly, which I guess as long as the number keeps going up, then it keeps looking like we have more US dollars. So roughly, 200 grand sitting inside the bank, the guild bank, and that's held by about 65 different members, right? So there's a bunch of different contributors around the world, and we're all sort of looking to push forward applications on top of Ethereum. Oh, nice. All the communities. So what started off as Waugh Alex DAO then was iterated into MetaCartel, and then MetaCartel was iterated into a million different versions of itself, right? Where basically the fundamental idea is that you have a DAO that holds money, and then you have a community that dictates where the money goes, right? And so these are a bunch of different efforts. I'll go through, give a quick explanation just because they're exciting, and you guys might want to get involved with one of them. So the first one is MetaClan. MetaClan is basically like, you imagine poker staking, where if you want to play poker, you're really good at poker and you can prove that, then someone will stake you, right? So they'll give you $1,000 to play, and then you can play that game. Well, MetaClan's the same thing, but for video games, right? So if you want to play a crypto game, you can get given all of the items you need so you can be the best at that game. MetaFactory, the next one in the middle, is basically it's an NFT, which is also an amazing jacket or amazing pieces of apparel, and they're making a system so that you can almost gamify how you sell clothing, right? So imagine FOMO 3D meets like Saint Fame or like another one of those sort of digital e-commerce type things, but with a bunch of cool economics behind it. Metagame is sort of the wider scope, right? How do we turn what is, the crypto ecosystem into actually more of a game-like structure, right? So you can incentivize every different type of action and reward that in that same way. There's a really cool app that's been developed by Metagame. Raid Guild is another one, which is basically a DAO that all works together. So, you have 10 people in a group, they all have different skills. You get a bunch of deal flow coming in because there's so many people inside of the DAOs. And then what the Raid Guild can do is provide basically any service, right? So there's front-end developers, back-end developers, people that do game theory, people that do all different marketing, sales, all the different roles sort of held within inside a Raid Guild, and then we can work really efficiently. DAO House is basically a platform where you can summon a DAO really easily. Marketing DAO, hopefully people are familiar with Marketing DAO for Amanda's presentation. Basically it's funding ETH, it's marketing ETH. Rocket DAO, which Alex left, I was going to give him a shout out, but Alex made Rocket DAO, and it's basically NFTs, loans against NFTs, right? So how can you have a crypto kitty and take a loan and DAI against that? All of these groups have been started by the MetaCartel and sort of surrounding ecosystem members. And really, it's all been done on Telegram, right? So it's like a bunch of nerds sitting in like 25, 36, 70 Telegram groups together, just spamming each other, and that's what's made all of this happen, right? So there's now probably 500-600 people that are contributing to these different working groups, and all of it is started based on Telegram groups and cool ideas. And funding, right, from MetaCartel. So digital versus real-life community. Digital communities are pretty good in a lot of ways, right? They're really accessible, really open, but there's some downsides to that as well, right? Because it's that idea of always surrounded but always alone, right? The internet is quite good at making you feel like that sometimes, where you can have 1 million likes on something, but you end up sitting there being like, oh, no one's actually talking to me, right? And so really what we've done is combine those two ideas, where we have the permissionless, trustless layer being Ethereum, right, for where we store the money. And then we have, the permission, trusted community elements for how we actually interact with people. And so it's that combination which has been super effective. and combining the idea of using the back end of crypto, but not relying on it as the only thing, right? If we just have a digital, a community, then we have something like a forum, or we have something like, even holding a token, right? Holding a token isn't actually that compelling to join a community versus having something that's a little more permissioned and a little more like, exclusive is the wrong word, right? But you don't want some random, Justin Sun, if Justin Sun tries to join MetaCartel, it's probably going to be like a no, right? I mean, if you bring us like $20 million, we might say yes, but otherwise it's like you're a little bit of a dick, you're kind of scamming people, you're not allowed to join the DAO. So community doesn't build itself. So for those that don't know, the summoner of MetaCartel is called Peter Pan. Peter's currently sitting in Sydney right now, and he's like super upset that he's not here. He's like the digital receptionist of MetaCartel right now for Denver. But really, the idea, it's been floated on Twitter over the past couple of weeks, that the idea that having a dictatorship that you can rage quit straight away. So what these DAOs allow is this idea of rage quitting, right? Which means that if you put in $100, the next day you can leave with $90 and there's no risk, right? That's an instant transaction. And so the idea of having a dictator where you can instantly leave actually isn't too bad, right? Because last night we're all sitting in the MetaCartel house and we call Peter and Peter says, why haven't you done this? This needs to be done. We're like, we're at a conference, Peter, it's okay. And he's pushing us through all these things, right? So the idea of having someone driving that ship is actually really important, because otherwise you get into the situation which a lot of digital communities have, where it's like the tragedy of the commons, right? Everyone wants something to happen, but no one actually wants to do it. If you have someone like really making you do it, it works out a lot better. And that's certainly what Peter has built himself. The next thing is that culture is key, right? So the internet, is this culture? I think it is in the case of MetaCartel, right? We literally have formed a community on the back of the internet as the primary culture. The internet and the idea of decentralization in crypto are really the two fundamental building blocks that have made this all happen. And that's probably the most common thread through MetaCartel and through the other DAOs is that people get the internet, right? People understand the importance of the internet, and that's really what has allowed the DAO to form the way it's the way it has. So culture is really hard to build if it's just an open system. If anyone could buy a token, it's impossible to dictate what the culture of that token is, right? If only a select group of people can join a community, right? If you've been contributing, if you want to help, if you're pledging money, if you can sort of align people at the start, then you can build that culture in a really good way. And the other thing is that the culture is built on blood and sweat, right? How much work have you done? If you've done 100 hours of work for the MetaCartel, you will certainly be bought in instantaneously, right? If you give $100 million, if you give $100 to the MetaCartel, you'll be bought in instantly. But really, it's that idea of like lead, follow, or get the fuck out of the way. Like that's sort of the idea of MetaCartel, is that realistically, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you sprint down that path, right? If you have no idea what you want to do and what you want to help on, find one of those, we'll go back. Find one of these projects that sounds the most interesting and just like reach out to them, right? There's a bunch of Telegram groups you can help, and just sprinting down one path really is the key in order to make it all happen. Nice, okay. So ecosystem overview. This is a super nice graphic which has been built up outside of MetaCartel. So about 6 months ago, there was sort of V1 of this graphic, and it was probably like a tenth as much information, right? A tenth as many people, a tenth as much grants. It was significantly smaller not that long ago, and now we've built it into this huge universe of MetaCartel. And so there's a bunch of things around the outside of that universe that is sort of the media, right? Like the podcast, the Telegram groups, the tutorial island, and then also some of the service providers, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second, like that raid guild idea, right, where we can all help a company for the right reasons. Then you also have all the grants at the bottom, so a bunch of amazing projects that have been funded purely just based on people like myself and other MetaCartel members who just want to push the Ethereum space forward. 600 odd community members, and through I don't know how many Telegram groups and I don't know how many efforts, a lot. And 60 odd, probably 70 closer now, DAO members, and we've deployed about 60K worth of grants. And that's certainly going to continue hard into this year. We're really like pushing forward dApps and pushing forward, different experiments and actually giving them the signal, right? Again, I'll talk a little bit in a second, but the idea of signaling, the signal being worth significantly more than the money really is the key of MetaCartel, right? Having 200 grand sitting inside of a multi-sig isn't going to change the world, right? But having 60 founders who are deep in the crypto space, who can do basically the full stack, and we point at you and we say, we want to give you money, we want to help you, that has done a lot of things for a lot of these grantees, right? Basically 100% of them have said the couple of grand in a grant is useful. The signal we got was 10x more valuable than the money we got. And that sort of is the point of MetaCartel. So, when looking at how to build these digital communities, a really important piece of that is sustainability. And really what this is here is the pentagram of DAO service providers. And these are a bunch of different companies. Raid Guild I already talked about, it's a decentralized collective. Abridged is an amazing group basically working on DAO ops and visual smart contract design. Odyssey are the guys behind DAO House. They've built an amazing instant DAO deploy button. Website. OpenLaw, they've done a bunch of amazing stuff about the combination of sort of smart contract logic and traditional legal logic. And then Axia Labs, that's me and Callum, and we just hang out and do game theory and try and break economic systems and things like that. But these different service providers really are the keys of the sustainability of MetaCartel and actually being able to push these groups forward, right? Throwing in some money is good. Organizing some stuff, doing some work is also good, but we need to be able to build for the long term, right? So how can a company come in and we can give them A, B, C, D, and E about the best ways to move forward? And really that's what's being built up here. The next thing is about building communities, with money versus signal. So over the past couple of years in crypto, we've seen a lot of people try and build a community with money, right? It's like, hey, we have 10 million, or a better example, we raised $2 billion to be an Ethereum killer, right? How are we going to get people to build on top of our blockchain? Well, what we'll do is we'll just pay them 200 grand each to build an application on top of our blockchain. That hasn't worked, right? There's very few dApps on top of EOS that are legitimate, and no one really cares because just throwing money at teams so that they'll build on your blockchain really isn't that convincing. And that's certainly what we've seen here with MetaCartel and the different initiatives going on there. Coming up with a bag full of money and throwing it at someone, I'm sure they're going to be really happy about it. But like 6 months down the train, a year down the train, where are they actually at, right? And what's been built with the MetaCartel and now MetaCartel Ventures, which is basically a for-profit version of the grant-giving DAO. We're really, traditional VCs sort of come in and just douchebags all the time, right? It's like, hey, I have a bunch of money, and if you can sell me the right enough story, I'll give you a little bit of money. You can put my logo on your website. It'll be amazing. You'll get way more money. It's awesome. Versus actually just helping the project, right? So if we have 50 people inside of MetaCartel Ventures, we can actually really, really help a project from all pieces of the puzzle, right? We want the experiment to work, so we will make sure it works by helping every single project as much as we can. So MetaCartel is everywhere. We were chilling at Enterprise, which is a co-working space in Denver. We were there for like 3 or 4 days. There was a bunch of different meetups from companies. None of them are really that full. MetaCartel doesn't meet up. The room's packed, right? Everyone's there to learn. It really has been an inflection point since, sort of Osaka, maybe a little bit before that, where DAOs are eating the world. There was a lot of talk last year that said 2019 was the year of the DAOs. Maybe it was the year of some DAOs, but I think 2020 will be the year of more DAOs. And we're definitely seeing that with a bunch of MetaCartel Ventures just launched yesterday. There's probably going to be a bunch of other for-profit DAOs that are going to launch over the short term, as well as the idea of grant-giving DAOs being implemented into a number of tokens. So I think my take is that the tokens that are being built, that have been built in the past, are all going to start to pivot to some type of DAO mechanic in order to build that community, right? Rather than just speculating on a shitcoin. So we have a bunch of hacker boxes. So if anyone's hacking, we upstairs and we'll be walking around giving them out. They have a bunch of stickers and cool stuff inside of them. There's a bunch of us hanging around with little pins, or just generally look for the people that look kind of crazy, and you'll probably be able to identify MetaCartel people. We'd love to chat about what you're developing, how we can help, everything like that. So thank you very much. If you want to go to MetaCartel website, go there. Thanks. Any questions? Yeah. Is there a... Oh. You can just yell it. Oh, no, nice.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions.
So speaking about community, has there been a conversation about like a upper limit on a real life, like a number for an actual community where you know everyone there?
Yeah, so sort of like, what's it called? Dunbar's number? Like the number of people you can know. Yeah, so when we were in Denver a few months ago, the MetaCartel, we did sort of MCon 1, and we were talking about we wanted to grow MetaCartel, right? We were at sort of 40 members, and we were like, by Denver, we want to have 100. that would have been nice, right? Now we're at sort of 60, 70, we got halfway. But what we found is that over that time period, a number of other DAOs have spun up, right? So it wasn't that we grew up, it was that the DAOs grew sideways. And I think sort of, thinking that there's going to be 10,000 people DAOs that are like interoperating with each other, maybe aspirationally in the future, but if we can have lots of DAOs with 100 people in them or a couple of hundred people in them, all interoperating, I think that's how you can sort of get around some of that stuff. But I agree, as you scale the community, it is going to get to a stage where like natural hierarchy forms, right? There's people that don't know each other, etc., etc. Agree. Yeah. Any other questions?
I know you guys do a lot of technical-based grants. Are there anything more outside of that space? Kind of the marketing or community, like physical meetup community side of it?
So definitely the grants have been pretty purposely directed at hackers and ideas that they can sort of push forward. But we are very open to doing cool things. So those boxes, where are we? Those boxes there that we have upstairs, that was a couple of $1,000s of stickers and boxes and random stuff as a guerrilla marketing effort, right? Things like that always get funded as well. So if it's pushing Ethereum forward, Ethereum dApps forward, MetaCartel forward, there's been a bunch of grants given for that kind of stuff outside of just like individual projects as well. Nice. Any more? Cool. Well, thank you very much. Come find MetaCartel.